Let's have a look at this. I'm not even sure what this is, but we have a racing car, Pan Am car, with the body off of it, so it's a shadow. And so you can see how small the tube structure is on it. At least the aluminum monocoque is a bit bigger. But you can imagine this thing going 200 miles an hour and getting in an accident, and what happens to your legs on it. So I'm just gonna walk around. Not sure what they're doing on it. The size of the engine on it. These guys are working on the Cobra over here. Rear tires on this car. Transaxle out the rear. What a neat machine. Oil tank for the dry sump. Surprisingly small brakes. He's out here renting on the cars. Neat car, a Shadow. This is also a really special car. This is an ERA. ERAs were extremely competitive cars. They're pre-war cars, but they were also raced. Post-war, and still competitive. So it's a supercharged 1.5 liter engine, and it's based on a Riley. And this car is the most significant ERA. You can see that little mouse, and that was from White Mouse Racing, and that was the Prince of Siam, Prince Bira, who raced the car pre-war, and he had a tremendous amount of success with it. And this car has been raced almost consistently, I think, for something like 50 years. And I've seen this car before. It's called Romulus, and if we look on the inside of it, we can see all the different plaques from the race meets that this car has been in. So I think it's had about 50 I should say, many different cracks in the engine, which has been lovingly rewelded, and it's had a constant racing history since the 30s. So it's an irreplaceable car. It has to be worth millions of dollars. I'm not sure what the number is, and the other great thing about this car that I recall is that it's the finest sounding race engine I think I've ever heard. I heard it first on Nick Mason's Into the Red book, which had an accompanying CD, and it's just absolutely spine tingling. So this is Romulus, the ERA. It'd be the early 30s car. Wonderful machine. This is a Porsche 908, I believe it's a 908-3, and this was a 3-liter 8-cylinder car that, oops, that was just wrong. And here's a great car. This would have been mid-70s, 1975, 1976. It's a Niki Lauda, and I'm going to say it's a 312 T2. And this would have been the flat 12 Ferrari boxer engine F1 car. And this would have been the car that Niki Lauda crashed in the Nürburgring with and was horribly burned. They made a version of this car called a T3, and that's the one that Villeneuve drove, and when he started racing for Ferrari in '78, I guess. But that's a great era for F1, and one of the last aluminum monocoque cars before they went to carbon fiber in the 80s, but still a really wonderful machine. 3-liter 12-cylinder engine. Now this is a Lotus 49, and this would have been the car, would be the first car where they used the engine as a stressed member of the chassis and just bolted the forward, that's a DFV in the back, 3-liter 8-cylinder twin cam engine, and the engine would have been bolted directly to the firewall, and then the suspension picks up off the engine. And this, I believe, was the first DFV car, and then the DFV went on to dominate F1 racing for probably 10 years. And then I believe this car would have been what Jim Clark would have driven to utterly dominate the F1 racing in the 60s. So very significant car in the history of motor racing. This is a pre-ground effect car, so there's no wings. And later on in the 60s, maybe 65, 66, 67, they would have had wings on them. But this is looks a lot cleaner, I think, without the, especially since some of the aerodynamic experimentation was kind of awkward looking. So very pure car. And when this car came out, like I said, with Jim Clark and Colin Chapman, it dominated F1 racing the way F1 racing hadn't seen since, I guess, the McLaren Honda years with Ayrton Senna. This is nice. Aston Martin DB3 or DB3S, I can't really remember. But this would have been the car that Aston campaigned in the 50s. Was it the one that they won Le Mans with? Or was that a DBR one? I can't remember. But still, they had a lot of racing success with this car. Drivers like Sterling Moss and Carroll Shelby. And this would have date from the mid-50s. And this is the period Aston Martin Racing Green. Wonderful car. Charismatic machine. And I think probably the first Aston to then use the now popularized, or the Aston Martin grille. So wonderful car. Here's another Aston. This is the DB4 GT Zagato. So they only made, oh, I don't know, 15 of these or something like that, and they're all, of course, aluminum. And this one's in polished aluminum, so it just looks fantastic. So this would have been on the DB4 chassis. You'll need $3 or $4 million to buy a DB4 GT Zagato, and one of the most beautiful post-war racing cars, and very successful in period 2. Next to it here, we've got what looks like an early Lotus, but sometimes what looks like a Lotus isn't. It's an Elva or something. So let's see what this is. This is a Lola. And then we've got another Ferrari 250 GTO. And this one looks unrestored. Look at that, huh? Paint is crazing, and plexiglass covers are off. And, you know, it looks like somebody painted it with a brush. But this has probably been a racing car its whole life. Look at that paint, huh? So it's probably the only one in the world that still looks like this. I mean, every other GTO with that kind of value, your car's worth $20 million, spending $100 grand on a paint job isn't very much. So the owner of this car would have elected to keep the original paint on it. So it looks like somebody also added some probably much needed sound deadening with the quilted lining there to keep the noise down on the road. But you know, what's cool about this car is that it's probably the original aluminum too, and many of these cars have been crashed and rebodied, and so they lose, you know, it might look perfect, but this one probably has, it's probably all original metal on it, which is probably pretty rare. So here's a neat Lotus. Not sure what it is. It could be a Formula Ford or a Formula 2. It's going to date from the early to mid 60s, and it's got a Ford Kent engine in it, 1600cc, Cosworth head. It's got the twin side draft Webers and Hewland gearbox on it, Dunlop racing tires, and these cars, you know, if you want to go vintage racing, I believe you can still buy a car like this for $50,000, $60,000 or something like that. And as you can see, you know, if you're anyway handy, it all comes apart pretty easy. Looks like the body work is over here, and you can work on the car. So steel tubular frame, or at least to support the suspension, aluminum monocoque, and 4-speed fueling gearbox. And let's see if it says what it is. Don't know. I think geez, is it Lotus 51? Can't remember. But it's got the yellow wobbly web rims on it, and the Dunlop tires. So anyway, neat car. If you want to go, like I said, it's an affordable, relatively affordable way to get into vintage racing. An F1 car would be from the mid '80s somewhere. It would probably have one of the last Ford DFVs in it. So that's the same car as the Lotus 49, and this one is driven by James Hunt, who's also known as Hunt the Shunt, and a very colorful figure in F1 racing in the 70s and 80s. Actually, was this an 80s car? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's late 70s. He's also something of a ladies' man and a real colorful character. He used to commentate the F1 races with Murray Walker, and he was always quite dry and quite sarcastic. I really enjoyed watching him. Let me just see what this is. So I'm going to say it's a late 70s car, 77, 78, something like that. Wonderful, wonderful Porsche 935. This is a Kremer car, and it's 1980 with a great race history, freshly restored, but 800 horsepower, 3.2 liter engine, and you know, only running, well, relatively only running like, I think, 1.6 bar a boost or something like that. Anyway, great car. This must be all where Bruce Canepa's selection. So he built this Speedster, but stuck basically a 962 engine, flat fan 962 engine. So this is for sale on his website. Pretty cool car. You should go to Canepa or Google Canepa and check out the photographs of this thing. It's an amazing machine, and it's got a whole bunch of everything from a Datsun 2000 to it's like a Javelin. It's like the Mark Donohue IROC car. Another 935 Porsche, 908 Porsche that looks like an Abarth, and then this thing in the end is looks like a Lagonda. Another really great name, actually. No, that's a Bentley instead. That's a Bentley. So great big thumping engine, massive car. And Canepa was the first guy to bring in Porsche 959s, I think at the behest of Bill Gates, and he's credited for pushing through the show and display legislation that allows unfederalized cars to come into the country as long as you don't drive them more than 2,500 miles. So, but it was Bill Gates, the 959, and Bruce Canepa that started that.